So that should be pretty bullish in the intermediate term. And so basically what that does, so that one of the differences between Ethereum and Bitcoin is that since inception, Bitcoin's had a very algorithmic monetary policy. They basically said that the new supply of coins is going to get cut in half every 4 years. It hasn't changed, and it's just kind of this sound money kind of principle that it goes through. Ethereum's different because from the beginning, they planned more rapid changes to the protocol. And so the developers put in difficulty bombs. And so basically that's kind of like almost like a kind of a mutually assured destruction that's embedded into Ethereum that forces both miners and developers and users to switch over and do these hard forks every once in a while to kind of keep the development going. And so, basically in Ethereum, the developers have more control, so they can change monetary policy more than they can in Bitcoin. And so there's actually kind of almost like a central bank of Ethereum in the sense that you can actually change monetary policy with less difficulty than you can in Ethereum. And so that's been one of the critiques against it. But in this latest proposal, they want to try to have a somewhat more concrete monetary policy where there's going to be a deflationary component, which is that some portion of the fees that are sent to miners will be burned, right? So basically be a way to destroy Ethereum. On the other hand, there will still be a issuance, and that issuance will be based on how many Ethereum are being used to validate the network over time. And so as there's kind of a couple steps here. So one is they're doing that kind of deflationary protocol. Then they're trying to shift to proof of stake. And so there's kind of a multiple steps here. But over time, you should have a more consistent monetary policy with a very low amount of issuance. So one of the long-term questions there is, okay, so you have now kind of a quantitatively sound monetary policy, but then from a qualitative perspective, it's can that be trusted? So will they change it again in the future, right? So if they changed it before, can they change it again? And so that should be kind of bullish in the intermediate term. We're also seeing that because ETH2 is being rolled out and it's kind of got this unclear deadline for when it's going to happen. It's kind of gotten delays over time. And so with ETH2 staking, basically what people are doing is they're taking their Ethereum tokens and then they're locking them up into this smart contract where they're basically earning a yield to help kind of verify and secure the new kind of ETH2 beacon chain, kind of the new core blockchain. And so what that's doing is it's kind of taking liquid Ethereum and moving them over into being illiquid Ethereum, because once they're in that contract, they can't come out. And so they kind of get locked away. And so it's almost a similar effect you saw like with Grayscale, where just, it's basically this one directional flow of liquid Ether to illiquid Ether. And so I think, at least it could be one of those things is to sell the news event. So once Ethereum 2 is kind of rolled out and that Ethereum gets unlocked, it could ironically, be a sell the news event where now you get out of your position. But at least until then, that's a pretty strong upward price pressure for Ethereum, because you'll have ways to convert liquid to illiquid Ethereum with ETH2 staking, and then in addition you have the EIP 1559, which should be a more disinflationary monetary policy than Ethereum's had in the past. Like I said before, the kind of the main thing about Bitcoin is that it's out of all the blockchains, it's kind of the one that achieves sufficient decentralization, meaning that it's very, very hard to change, and most of the development happens on the extra layers. And so, Bitcoin did just do an update called Taproot, but that'll be the first major update since 2017 SegWit, and it got over 90% consensus. So, in order to update Bitcoin, it has to be almost unanimous, and it's more incremental. So there's, instead of kind of one central development hub, it's this very kind of slow update process. But that's exactly what you want out of, say, digital gold. You want to know with high certainty what it's going to be like. It's also purposely simple by design to maximize security, right? So it's not Turing complete, and so overall it has fewer attack surfaces, fewer opportunities for bugs, and whereas a lot of development can happen. For example, there's now smart contracts on Bitcoin with RSK and Stacks 2.0. There's Lightning Network, which makes it faster and kind of more usable on that secondary layer, and that's where a lot of the rapid development can happen. Whereas the underlying protocol is kind of like Fedwire, where it's this system that's kind of the foundation of the system. It's not kind of being rapidly changed. It's more for these large settlement transactions rather than, say, buying coffee with it. Whereas Ethereum, they're trying to do more on the base layer. And so that comes with technical risk, right? Because I've described it as like you're changing the engine while you're driving, because you're changing over from ETH1 to ETH2 at the same time as you have competitors, Cardano, Solana, these other Binance Chain, although they're obviously facing some issues now. But basically, there's a lot of other smart contract platforms, and one of the issues there is that there's pretty low switching costs for smart contracts, and so if there's, say, one of them gets high fees, as you've seen out of Ethereum lately, then stable coins and other things can spill over onto other smart contract platforms. And so, for example, speaking of Tether, Tether in its early days used to run on Omni, which ran on Bitcoin. But then when Ethereum was launched, Ethereum was a better suited blockchain for that purpose. And so Tether's moved over to primarily running on Ethereum. But when Ethereum started to become expensive, you started to see Tether migrate over to Tron, of all things. And Tron's not it's a more centralized blockchain. And so overall, you kind of have this kind of shift towards lower fees and more centralization, which kind of, it's almost like you're competing on cost, which is not a good place to be in. But Ethereum still has a very large developer network effect. It's got the, up there with Bitcoin, it's the top two overall kind of network effects. It's got the most transaction volume of any blockchain. You have basically a lot of tokens running on top of it. So it's got that kind of network effect. And so basically what you're comparing is a network effect to low switching costs, tons of competitors. And so overall, I view Bitcoin and Ethereum as being quite different, with different use cases and different risk profiles. So one of them is the purpose is simple foundation. I think the best analogy is TCP/IP for the internet, right? So that's been around since the 1970s. We're not radically changing the underlying foundation of the way the internet works. It's literally all, it's over 4 decades old. I'm pretty sure 4 decades from now, or at least 2 decades from now, it's not going to having changed much. We rapidly change the thing on the top of the surface for TCP/IP for the internet, right? So we're changing the application layer all the time, whereas that underlying tech is not rapidly changing. So Bitcoin uses that model, right? So there's lots of happening on the surface, whereas the foundation's kind of steady, whereas Ethereum is more kind of trying to be more ambitious on the base layer and do more things on the base layer, but then taking more risk by being Turing complete, by being more centralized in terms of development, and having more competitors from other smart contract platforms. So, I think that I don't really view them as kind of a one versus the other phenomenon, but it is possible that Ethereum's market cap could rival Bitcoin's in time.